Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had heard every insult in the book. Too soft for the real work, they said. Women don't belong in combat zones, others whispered. But the worst came from her own commanding officer at Camp Pendleton, just outside the quiet California town of Oceanside. "Santos, you're staying behind again," Colonel Bradley announced during the morning briefing. "We need someone to watch the base while the real soldiers do their job." Maria's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Sir, I've completed every sniper training program with top scores. My accuracy rating is 98%. Bradley's laugh was cold and dismissive. "Paper targets don't shoot back, Sergeant. This is a man's job." The other Marines in the room shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others smirked behind their hands. Maria had been through this routine dozens of times over her 8 years of service. Each rejection cut deeper than the last, but she never let it show. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice betraying nothing as the elite team prepared for their mission in the mountains near the Mexican border. Maria watched from the armory window. They were tracking a dangerous cartel cell that had been smuggling weapons and drugs through the remote canyon passes. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes operation she had trained for her entire career. Sergeant Mike Torres, one of the few soldiers who treated her with respect, stopped by her desk. "This isn't right, Maria. Everyone knows you're the best shot on this base." Maria shrugged, cleaning her rifle with practiced movements. "Orders are orders, Mike. You're better than half those guys going out there, and you know it." She did know it. Every morning at 5 a.m., while others were still sleeping, Maria was on the practice range. Every weekend, while her colleagues went to bars in town, she studied tactical manuals and honed her skills. She had grown up in East L.A., learned to shoot from her police officer father, who had died in the line of duty when she was 16. The military had become her family, her purpose, her way to honor his memory. But none of that seemed to matter to men like Bradley. "Maybe next time," she said, though they both knew there probably wouldn't be a next time. Not for her. The team left at dawn in 2 armored vehicles, their radio chatter fading as they disappeared into the rugged terrain. Maria settled into her usual routine of base security, checking perimeters, monitoring communications, and trying not to think about the mission she should have been part of. Hours passed quietly. The California sun beat down on the desert base, and the only sounds were the distant hum of air conditioning units and the occasional vehicle on the highway beyond. The gates. Maria made her rounds, professional as always, but her mind wandered to the team in the field. At 1400 hours, everything changed. The radio crackled to life with a burst of static, followed by a voice tight with panic. "Base, this is Alpha Team. We are taking heavy fire. Repeat, we are pinned down and taking casualties." Maria's training kicked in instantly. She grabbed the radio handset, her voice calm and controlled despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Alpha Team, this is Base. What's your situation?" "We walked into an ambush," came the reply. It was Lieutenant Hayes, the team leader. "They knew we were coming. Snipers in the rocks above us. We've got 3 men down, including the medic. Need immediate backup and medical evacuation." Maria's mind raced. The nearest backup unit was 2 hours away. In 2 hours, Alpha Team would be dead. She looked around the empty command center. Colonel Bradley was in meetings at divisional headquarters. The duty officer was a young corporal who looked like he might faint from the stress. There was no one else. "Alpha Team, hold your position. Help is coming," she said into the radio, though she wasn't sure how. For the next 30 minutes, she listened to the deteriorating situation. The enemy fire was getting closer. More men were wounded. Their ammunition was running low, and they were trapped in a small depression with no cover from the snipers above. "Base, we can't hold much longer. Hayes' voice came through weaker. "Now, tell our families we tried our best." Maria stared at her rifle, fully loaded and ready. She thought about Colonel Bradley's words that morning, about all the dismissive comments and closed doors, about her father, who had run toward danger when others ran away. She made her decision. Without a word to the corporal, Maria grabbed her gear and headed for the motor pool. She signed out a Humvee, loaded it with medical supplies and extra ammunition, and drove toward the gate. "Sergeant Santos, where are you going?" The gate guard called out. "To bring our boys home," she replied, not slowing down. The desert road stretched ahead, leading into the mountains where her brothers in arms were fighting for their lives. For once, Maria Santos wasn't going to watch from the sidelines. The drive took an hour and a half through winding mountain roads. With each mile, the radio reports grew more desperate. Alpha Team was down to their last magazines of ammunition. The enemy was closing in. Maria parked the Humvee a mile from the reported position and continued on foot, moving through the scrub brush and rocks with the stealth her training had taught her. Her rifle felt familiar and comforting in her hands. As she climbed higher into the rocky terrain, she could hear the gunfire echoing through the canyons. Her heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. This was her moment of truth. Everything she had trained for, everything she had endured, had led to this. The mockery, the dismissal, the constant battle to prove herself. It all fell away as she focused on the mission ahead. Alpha Team needed her. And for the first time in her career, no one could tell her she wasn't qualified to help. The sound of gunfire grew louder as Maria approached the ambush site. Through her binoculars, she could see the tactical situation clearly. Alpha Team was trapped in a rocky basin about 200 yards below her position, surrounded on three sides by enemy fighters positioned in the high ground. It was a perfect kill zone, and her fellow Marines were sitting ducks. Maria counted at least 12 enemy positions, their muzzle flashes giving away their locations as they poured automatic fire into the depression where Alpha Team had taken cover. Smoke grenades had been deployed, but they wouldn't last much longer. She keyed her radio, keeping her voice low. "Alpha Team, this is Santos. I'm in position on the northern ridge, approximately 400 yards from your location." The response came immediately, filled with disbelief. "Santos? What the hell are you doing here? This is a restricted operation." "Saving your lives," Maria replied curtly. "I need a situation report." There was a pause. Then Lieutenant Hayes came on the channel. "We've got 4 wounded, including Corporal Jackson, who took a round to the leg. We're low on ammunition and completely pinned down. The enemy has us zeroed from at least 6 sniper positions." Maria studied the terrain through her scope. The enemy snipers were well positioned, using natural rock formations for cover. But they had made one critical mistake. They were so focused on the Marines below that they hadn't posted any lookouts on the higher ridges. "I can see 6 confirmed sniper positions," Maria reported. 2 more probable positions on the eastern slope. You need to keep their heads down while I work." "Negative, Santos. You need to fall back and wait for backup." "That's an order." Maria almost smiled. Even trapped and outgunned, they were still trying to protect her from the real fighting. "With respect, Lieutenant, backup is still 90 minutes out. Your boys will be dead by then." She adjusted her rifle scope, finding the first target. "I'm engaging." The first shot was perfect. The enemy sniper, positioned behind a boulder about 300 yards away, dropped without a sound. His rifle clattered down the rocks, alerting his companions that something had changed. Maria was already moving, shifting to a new position before the echo of her shot had faded. She had learned long ago that a sniper's greatest advantage was remaining unseen. Fire and move. Never take 2 shots from the same position. The second target was more challenging, partially concealed behind a fallen log, only his head and shoulders visible. Maria controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow as her training took over. The shot was clean, dropping the fighter instantly. Asterisk. Now the enemy knew they were being hunted from above. Shouts echoed across the canyon as they tried to locate the new threat. Some turned their weapons toward the ridges, spraying automatic fire at rocks and shadows. But Maria was already gone, moving through the terrain like a ghost. "Santos, whatever you're doing, keep it up," Hayes called over the radio. "The pressure's letting up down here." Maria found her third position, a natural shooting rest between two boulders that gave her clear fields of fire to the eastern slope. Through her scope, she could see an enemy fighter trying to reposition, moving from rock to rock in short rushes. She led him slightly, accounting for his movement and the crosswind. The shot took him mid-stride, spinning him around before he collapsed behind cover. 3 down. At least 9 to go. The enemy was getting smarter now, keeping low and moving in coordinated bounds. Maria could hear them calling to each other in Spanish, trying to organize a sweep of the upper ridges. They knew someone was up there, picking them off one by one. She moved again, circling to the south to get a different angle on their positions. The physical exertion was demanding. The terrain was steep and rocky, and she was carrying a full combat load. But adrenaline kept her moving, along with the knowledge that Alpha Team's lives depended on her success. Her fourth shot was the most difficult yet. The target was nearly 600 yards away, positioned on a ledge that offered only a narrow window of opportunity. Maria had to account for wind, elevation, and the fact that the target was partially concealed behind a stone outcropping. She took her time with this one, breathing steadily and letting her training guide her. The shot felt perfect as it left the barrel, and she watched through her scope as the enemy fighter slumped forward, his weapon falling into the canyon below. "Holy hell, Santos," came a voice over the radio. It was Sergeant Kim, one of the Alpha Team members she barely knew. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "The same place you did," Maria replied, already moving to her next position. "I just paid better attention." The remaining enemy fighters were getting desperate now. Half their number were down, and they still couldn't locate the sniper who was systematically destroying their ambush. Some began to withdraw, abandoning their positions to seek better cover deeper in the canyon. But others pressed forward, trying to overwhelm Alpha Team's position before the mysterious sniper could pick them all off. The firefight intensified as automatic weapons fire echoed through the rocky terrain. "We're taking heavy fire down here," Hayes reported. "They're trying to rush our position." Maria could see the assault developing. 3 enemy fighters were moving down the slope toward Alpha Team's position, using covering fire from their remaining snipers to mask their approach. If they reached the depression, it would be a massacre. She had one chance to stop them. 3 moving targets, separated by about 50 yards each. She would have to make 3 perfect shots in rapid succession, with no time to adjust or relocate. Between targets, Maria found a stable shooting position and controlled her breathing. This was what all those years of training had been for. All those mornings on the range while others slept. All those nights studying ballistics manuals and tactical procedures. The first target was closest, about 200 yards away and moving fast down a rocky slope. Maria led him by several feet, squeezed the trigger smoothly, and watched him tumble. Without pausing, she shifted to the second target, already accounting for the different range and angle. The second shot was clean. The fighter pitched forward and didn't move. The third target had seen his companions fall and was desperately seeking cover behind a large boulder. But he had to expose himself to continue his advance, and when he did, Maria was ready. The shot took him center mass, dropping him instantly. The canyon fell silent, except for the echo of gunfire fading among the rocks. The remaining enemy fighters had had enough. Through her scope, Maria could see them retreating, abandoning their positions and their wounded as they fled deeper into the mountains. Alpha Team, this is Santos. Area appears secure. Recommend you extract your wounded and move to a more defensible position while we still have the advantage. The response came quickly, and for the first time, there was genuine respect in Lieutenant Hayes' voice. Copy that, Santos, and ... thank you. We owe you our lives. Maria allowed herself a small smile as she began the careful descent back to her vehicle. The hard part was over, but she knew that in many ways, her real battle was just beginning. When she got back to base, there would be questions. Explanations would be demanded. Colonel Bradley would be furious that she had disobeyed orders and left her post. But for now, Alpha Team was alive. And for the first time in her military career, Maria Santos felt like she had truly proven herself where it mattered most. Asterisk. The medical helicopter touched down at Camp Pendleton, just as the sun was setting over the California coast. Maria watched from the landing zone as Alpha Team's wounded were rushed to the base hospital, their faces pale but alive. Lieutenant Hayes caught her eye and nodded once, a gesture of respect she had never seen from him before. But her moment of satisfaction was short-lived. Sergeant Santos. Colonel Bradley's voice cut through the noise of the helicopter's rotors like a blade. My office. Now. Maria had expected this. She straightened her shoulders and followed the colonel across the base, very much aware of the stares from other personnel. Word had already spread about what had happened in the mountains. In a place where news traveled fast, her unauthorized rescue mission was the story of the day. Bradley's office was Spartan and cold, decorated only with his commendations and a photograph of him with various high-ranking officers. He didn't invite her to sit. Do you have any idea what you've done? Bradley began, his face red with anger. You abandoned your post. You disobeyed direct orders. You interfered with a classified operation. I saved the lives of 7 Marines, sir, Maria replied. Evenly. That's not your job. Bradley slammed his hand on the desk. Your job is to follow orders and stay within your assigned duties. What you did was reckless, insubordinate, and completely unacceptable. Maria felt her temper rising but kept her voice controlled. Sir, Alpha Team was pinned down and taking casualties. The nearest backup was 2 hours away. They would have been overrun. That was not your decision to make, Bradley shot back. We have protocol, Santos. Chain of command. You don't get to play hero just because you think you know better. The door opened and Lieutenant Hayes entered, still wearing his dusty combat gear. Sir, I requested permission to speak with you about Sergeant Santos. Bradley's eyes narrowed. This doesn't concern you, Hayes. With respect, Colonel, it absolutely concerns me. Hayes stepped forward, his voice firm. Sergeant Santos saved my team. Without her intervention, we would have suffered multiple casualties, possibly total loss of personnel. Her actions were precise, professional, and executed under extreme pressure. Asterisk, her actions were unauthorized, Bradley replied coldly. And I won't have subordinates thinking they can ignore orders whenever they feel like it. Hayes looked between Bradley and Maria, his jaw tight. Sir, in my report, I'm recommending Sergeant Santos for the Bronze Star with Valor device. Her marksmanship under combat conditions was exceptional. She eliminated 9 enemy combatants at ranges up to 600 meters while under indirect fire. Maria felt a surge of gratitude toward Hayes, but Bradley's expression only grew angrier. There will be no commendations, the colonel stated flatly. There will be disciplinary action. Santos, you're confined to base pending a formal investigation. You're also being transferred to administrative duties, effective immediately. The words hit Maria like a physical blow. After everything she had accomplished, after proving herself under fire, she was being punished. "Sir," Hayes protested, "that's completely dismissed, Lieutenant." Bradley cut him off. "Both of you, get out of my office." As they walked across the base in silence, Hayes finally spoke. "This is wrong, Maria. What Bradley's doing, ... It's not right." "It's nothing new," Maria replied, though her voice carried a weariness that hadn't been there before. "I should have expected it. The team knows what you did for us. That has to count for something." Maria wanted to believe that, but 8 years in the military had taught her otherwise. "It counts with you guys, but it doesn't count with the people who make the decisions." Over the next few days, the investigation began in earnest. Military investigators interviewed everyone involved, taking detailed statements about the unauthorized rescue operation. Maria told her story simply and honestly, without attempting to justify or defend her actions beyond the facts. But she could see which way the wind was blowing. Colonel Bradley made it clear to everyone that discipline and chain of command were paramount. Several officers who hadn't even been present for the mission suddenly had opinions about proper procedure and the dangers of allowing personnel to act independently. Meanwhile, Maria found herself assigned to inventory duties in the supply depot, about as far from combat operations as it was possible to get while still being in the military. She spent her days counting ammunition and medical supplies, trying not to think about the sniper rifle gathering dust in the armory. The other Marines on base were divided. Those who had served with Alpha Team and many of the enlisted personnel clearly saw Maria as a hero. They made a point of speaking to her respectfully, and some even sought her out to hear the story firsthand. But many of the officers seemed to agree with Bradley's position. They whispered about discipline and precedent, about what might happen if every soldier decided to ignore orders whenever they disagreed. "It's not about what she accomplished," Maria overheard Major Collins saying to another officer. "It's about maintaining order. If we let this slide, where does it end?" The preliminary investigation concluded after 2 weeks. Maria was called back to Bradley's office to hear the results. "The investigating board has reached its conclusions," Bradley announced, reading from an official document. "While it's acknowledged that your actions may have prevented casualties among Alpha Team personnel, your violation of direct orders and abandonment of assigned duties represents a serious breach of military discipline." Maria stood at attention, her face impassive. "You're being formally reprimanded and will receive a letter in your permanent file. You're also being reassigned to non-combat duties for the remainder of your current enlistment. This is your punishment for insubordination." "Yes, sir," Maria replied quietly. "Furthermore," Bradley continued, "I'm recommending that you not be considered for any future promotions or specialized training programs. Your actions have shown that you cannot be trusted to follow orders when they conflict with your personal judgment." Each word was like a knife twist, but Maria kept her expression neutral. She had known this was coming, had prepared herself for it. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. After she was dismissed, Maria walked slowly back to her quarters. Her military career, everything she had worked for since joining 8 years ago, was effectively over. She would serve out her remaining time pushing papers and counting supplies, then return to civilian life with a damaged record that would follow her everywhere. That evening, as she sat alone in her small room, Maria stared at the photograph on her desk, herself with her father. On the day she had graduated from basic training, he had been so proud, so sure that she was destined for great things in the service. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered to the photograph. "I tried to do the right thing." But even as she said it, Maria knew she would make the same choice again. Alpha Team was alive because of her actions. 7 Marines had gone home to their families instead of coming back in flag-draped coffins. That had to mean something, even if the military bureaucracy couldn't see it. Outside her window, the lights of Oceanside twinkled in the distance. Soon, she would be back in the civilian world, trying to figure out what came next for a disgraced soldier who had been too good at her job for her own good. But first, she had to endure the remaining months of her punishment, knowing that somewhere, in the mountains, there were enemy fighters who had learned to fear the unknown sniper who had turned their perfect ambush into a devastating defeat. If only her own command could see her the same way. 3 months into her punishment assignment, Maria had settled into a routine of quiet endurance. The supply depot was a world away from the adrenaline and purpose she had known in combat training. She spent her days in a windowless warehouse, checking serial numbers and updating inventory databases, while trying not to think about the rifle. Skills that were slowly deteriorating from lack of use. The other personnel in the supply section had grown accustomed to her presence. Most treated her with professional courtesy, though she occasionally caught them whispering about the sniper who disobeyed orders. Some seemed to view her as a cautionary tale about the importance of following the chain of command. But everything changed on a humid Tuesday morning in late September. Maria was cataloging medical supplies when Sergeant Torres appeared in the doorway of the warehouse, his face grim. "Maria, you need to come with me. Now, what's wrong?" she asked, setting down her clipboard. "Just come, please." Torres led her across the base to the main headquarters building, where an unusual amount of activity was visible. Military police vehicles were parked outside, and several officers she didn't recognize were entering the building with briefcases and official-looking documents. "Mike, what's going on?" Maria pressed. "Internal Affairs is here," Torres replied. Quietly, "There's been an investigation into the Alpha Team mission, and Maria... they want to talk to you." Maria's stomach dropped. She had assumed the matter was closed, that her punishment was the end of it. What kind of investigation? "The kind that involves federal agents and classified documents," Torres said. "Something big is happening." They were directed to a conference room where Maria found herself facing 2 investigators in civilian clothes and a Navy captain she had never seen before. The atmosphere was formal and tense. "Sergeant Santos," the captain began. "I'm Captain Rebecca Walsh from Naval Criminal Investigative Service. These are Special Agents Martinez and Chun from the FBI. We need to ask you some questions about the events of June 15th. Maria sat down carefully, her mind racing. "Yes, sir. I've already provided a full statement about the rescue operation." "Where?" "Not here about the rescue operation," Agent Martinez said, opening a thick file folder. "We're here about the ambush itself." Agent Chun leaned forward. "Sergeant Santos, in your statement you mentioned that the enemy appeared to be waiting for Alpha Team, that they seemed to know the team was coming. Can you elaborate on that observation?" Maria thought back to that day, remembering the tactical situation she had observed through her binoculars. The enemy positions were perfectly placed for an ambush. They had overlapping fields of fire and clear lines of sight to the area where Alpha Team took cover. It looked like they had been waiting there for some time. "How long would you estimate it would take to establish those positions?" Captain Walsh asked. "Several hours minimum, maybe longer. They had built up some of their firing positions with rocks and debris. That's not something you do quickly." The investigators exchanged glances. Agent Martinez made a note in his folder. "Sergeant Santos," Agent Chun continued, "we've been investigating potential security breaches related to several operations in this sector. Information that should have been classified has apparently reached hostile forces. We believe there may be a leak within the command structure." Maria felt the room grow colder. "A leak? You mean someone is passing information to the enemy?" "That's what we're trying to determine," Captain Walsh replied. "Your observations from the rescue operation have been very helpful in establishing a timeline and pattern of compromised operations. Agent Martinez pulled out several photographs and spread them on the table. They showed the ambush site from different angles, with marked positions indicating where enemy fighters had been located. Based on radio intercepts and your after-action observations, we believe the enemy had detailed knowledge of Alpha Team's route, timing, and objectives, he explained. That level of intelligence could only have come from someone with access to classified operational planning. The implications hit Maria like a physical blow. Someone on the base, someone in a position of trust, had betrayed Alpha Team. Had it not been for her unauthorized intervention, 7 Marines would have died because of that betrayal. Do you have any suspects? She asked quietly. The investigators looked at each other before Captain Walsh responded. We have several persons of interest, but we need to ask you to keep this conversation strictly confidential. If word of this investigation reaches the wrong people, it could compromise our efforts to identify the source of the leaks. Maria nodded. Of course. But why are you telling me this now? Agent Chun closed his folder and looked directly at her. Because we believe your actions may have prevented more than just casualties that day. The enemy was clearly prepared for a much larger engagement. We think they were planning to capture personnel for intelligence purposes, or possibly to stage a propaganda event. Your intervention disrupted their entire operation, Agent Martinez added. And in doing so, you may have exposed the fact that they had inside information. That's what led us to investigate the possibility of a leak in the first place. Captain Walsh stood up, signaling the end of the interview. Sergeant Santos, I want you to know that your actions that day likely prevented a significant intelligence compromise and saved not just Alpha Team, but potentially future operations as well. The preliminary findings of our investigation will be forwarded to your commanding officer. As Maria left the conference room, her mind was reeling. For months, she had been living with the belief that her career was over, that she had been punished for doing what was necessary to save her fellow Marines. Now she was learning that her actions had implications far beyond what she had understood. Torres was waiting for her outside the building. How did it go? He asked. I can't talk about it, Maria replied, still processing what she had learned. But things might not be what they seemed. Over the next several days, Maria noticed increased security around the base. Additional military police were visible, and several officers she recognized were absent from their usual duties. The rumor mill was working overtime, with stories ranging from terrorist threats to major disciplinary actions. But Maria kept her promise to remain silent about the investigation. She returned to her inventory duties, though now she viewed her punishment assignment in a different light. Perhaps her exile from combat operations wasn't just disciplinary. Perhaps it was also protective, keeping her away from sensitive operations while the security breach was investigated. 2 weeks later, the news broke across the base like a shockwave. Colonel Bradley had been arrested by military police and charged with providing classified information to foreign agents. The investigation had uncovered evidence that he had been passing operational details to cartel contacts in exchange for substantial cash payments. Maria was in the supply warehouse when Sergeant Torres brought her the news. She set down the medical kit she was inspecting and stared at him in disbelief. Bradley was the leak? She asked. All this time, Torres confirmed. NCI says he's been compromised for over 2 years. The cartels weren't just smuggling drugs. They were paying him for intelligence about our operations. Maria felt a mixture of emotions wash over her: vindication, anger, and a deep sadness that someone in a position of trust had betrayed the Marines under his command. There's more, Torres continued. Captain Walsh wants to see you. She's taken temporary command of the base until a replacement can be assigned. As Maria walked across the base toward headquarters, she realized that everything was about to change. The investigation had revealed the truth not just about Bradley's betrayal, but about the real value of her actions that day in the mountains. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope that justice might finally be served, not just for Alpha Team, but for every Marine who had been put at risk by Bradley's treachery. The truth had a way of surfacing, even when powerful people tried to bury it. And sometimes, Maria reflected, doing the right thing required more patience than courage. Captain Walsh's temporary office was a stark contrast to Colonel Bradley's intimidating setup. The walls were bare, except for operational maps and duty rosters, and she had positioned her desk to face visitors directly rather than creating a barrier between herself and her personnel. "Sergeant Santos, please sit down," Captain Walsh said, her tone professional but respectful. "I have some things to discuss with you." Maria took the offered chair, noting that this was the first time in months that a superior officer had invited her to sit during a meeting. "The investigation into Colonel Bradley's activities has revealed some disturbing information," Captain Walsh began. "Beyond the security breaches, we've uncovered evidence of systematic retaliation against personnel who might have threatened his operation." She opened the file folder on her desk. "Your punishment assignment, for instance. The investigation board that recommended your disciplinary action was heavily influenced by Bradley's input. Several board members have since admitted that Bradley pressured them to ensure you received maximum punishment." Maria felt her jaw tighten. "So my career was destroyed to protect a traitor?" "It appears so," Captain Walsh replied. "Bradley saw you as a potential threat. Your skill level and dedication made you exactly the kind of Marine who might notice inconsistencies in operational security. By sidelining you and damaging your reputation, he reduced the risk of exposure." The captain pulled out another document. "I've been reviewing your complete service record, including your training scores and performance evaluations. Your sniper qualifications are exceptional, among the top 5% of all Marines tested. Yet you were consistently excluded from advanced training and operational assignments." "Colonel Bradley said I wasn't suited for combat operations," Maria said quietly. "Colonel Bradley was protecting his illegal activities by keeping competent personnel away from sensitive operations," Captain Walsh corrected. "The Marines he did select for important missions were either compromised themselves or lacked the skills to notice when operations were being compromised." Maria absorbed this information, feeling a mixture of anger and vindication. "What happens now?" "Several things," Captain Walsh replied, consulting her notes. "First, the disciplinary action against you is being reversed. The letter of reprimand will be removed from your file, and your record will be amended to reflect the true circumstances of your actions." Maria felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. "Second," the captain continued, "you're being restored to full combat duty status. I'm also recommending you for immediate promotion to staff sergeant, which should have happened months ago if not for Bradley's interference. And third," Captain Walsh smiled for the first time during the meeting, "Lieutenant Hayes' recommendation for the Bronze Star with Valor device is being resubmitted. Based on the investigation findings and witness statements, I'm confident it will be approved." Maria stared at the captain, hardly believing what she was hearing. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Captain Walsh replied. "But there's something I need to ask of you. The investigation has exposed serious weaknesses in our operational security. I need someone I can trust to help rebuild confidence in this unit, someone with the skills and integrity to ensure this never happens again." She leaned forward slightly. "I'm offering you a position as senior sniper instructor and security liaison. You would be responsible for training personnel and reviewing operational procedures to prevent future compromises. It would mean working directly with my staff and having input into mission planning. Maria was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what was being offered. After months of punishment and exile, she was being given not just her career back, but a position of real responsibility and trust. "I accept," she said finally. "Good," Captain Walsh nodded. "Your first assignment is to conduct a complete review of our sniper training program. I want recommendations for improvements within 30 days. We need to ensure we're developing the kind of Marines who can perform under pressure when their brothers and sisters are in danger." As Maria left the meeting, she felt like she was walking in a dream. The base looked the same, but everything had changed. Personnel she passed nodded respectfully, and several stopped to congratulate her on her vindication. Word of Bradley's arrest and the investigation findings had spread quickly through the Marine community. The story of how Maria's unauthorized rescue mission had inadvertently exposed a major security breach was becoming legendary. Sergeant Torres was waiting for her outside the headquarters building. "So?" he asked with barely contained excitement. "I'm back," Maria replied, unable to suppress her smile. "Full reinstatement. And they want me to redesign the sniper training program." Torres whooped and grabbed her in a bear hug, spinning her around despite her protests. "I knew this would happen. I knew the truth would come out." Over the next few days, Maria began to understand the full scope of Bradley's betrayal. The investigation had revealed that he had compromised at least 6 operations over 2 years, leading to the deaths of 3 Marines and the wounding of several others. His information had allowed cartel forces to avoid patrols, set up ambush, and stay one step ahead of military operations. The Alpha Team mission had been his most ambitious attempt yet, a carefully orchestrated ambush designed to eliminate an entire Marine unit and capture their equipment for cartel use. Only Maria's intervention had prevented what could have been a devastating loss of life and intelligence. Lieutenant Hayes stopped by her new office on her first day, back in her restored position. "I wanted to thank you again," he said. "Not just for saving us that day, but for having the courage to do what was right, even when everyone was telling you it was wrong." "I just did my job," Maria replied. "No," Hayes shook his head. "You did more than your job. You risked everything to save us, and it turned out you were also saving the entire unit from future compromises. That takes a special kind of person." As Maria settled into her new role, she reflected on the lessons of the past year. She had learned that doing the right thing often came with a price, but that truth had a way of eventually surfacing. She had also learned that real leadership meant standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult or dangerous. The military was an institution built on trust, honor, and the commitment to protect one another. When that trust was betrayed, as Bradley had betrayed it, the consequences extended far beyond individual careers or operations. But Maria had also learned something else, that there were still good people in positions of authority, people like Captain Walsh, who valued integrity over politics and who were willing to fight for what was right. As she began reviewing the files for the new sniper training program, Maria felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since joining the military. This was her chance to ensure the future Marines would be properly trained and prepared for the dangers they would face. More importantly, it was her chance to make sure that no commanding officer would ever again be able to sideline qualified personnel for personal or corrupt reasons. The new training protocols she was developing would create clear, objective standards that couldn't be manipulated or ignored. Her father's photograph now sat prominently on her new desk, and for the first time in months, Maria felt like she was truly honoring his memory and the values he had taught her about service and sacrifice. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust and implementing new procedures would take time and patience. But Maria Santos had learned that sometimes the most important battles were fought not with rifles and tactics, but with integrity and the courage to stand up for what was right. Asterisk. 6 months later, Maria stood at attention on the parade ground. At Camp Pendleton, surrounded by her fellow Marines and their families. The California sun was bright overhead, and a gentle breeze carried the smell of the ocean from the nearby coast. Captain Walsh, who had been confirmed as the permanent commanding officer, approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to honor one of our own, a Marine who exemplifies the values of courage, honor, and commitment that define our Corps." Maria's heart raced as she heard the familiar words of the Bronze Star citation being read aloud. The events of that day in the mountains seemed both distant and immediate as Captain Walsh described her actions in detail. For heroic achievement in connection with military operations against an armed enemy, the captain read, "Staff Sergeant Maria Santos distinguished herself by extraordinary heroism while serving as a sniper in support of combat operations, when friendly forces came under intense enemy fire and sustained casualties. Staff Sergeant Santos voluntarily left a position of relative safety and moved through hostile territory to engage enemy forces." The crowd was silent except for the flutter of flags in the breeze. Maria could see her mother in the front row, tears streaming down her face as she held a folded American flag, the one that had covered her husband's casket 8 years ago, acting with complete disregard for her own safety. Staff Sergeant Santos engaged and neutralized 9 enemy combatants at ranges up to 600 meters, effectively breaking up a coordinated ambush and allowing the trapped Marines to extract safely with their wounded. Her actions directly saved the lives of 7 Marines and prevented the compromise of sensitive military operations. Captain Walsh stepped forward with the medal. "Staff Sergeant Santos, it is my honor to present you with the Bronze Star Medal, with Valor device in recognition of your exceptional heroism and devotion to duty." As the medal was pinned to her dress blue uniform, Maria felt the weight of years of struggle and vindication settling on her shoulders. The applause from the assembled Marines was thunderous, and she could see genuine respect and admiration in their faces. But the ceremony wasn't over. "Staff Sergeant Santos," Captain Walsh continued, "you have also been selected to receive the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for your exceptional performance in redesigning our sniper training program. Your innovations have already been adopted at bases across the Marine Corps, setting new standards for marksmanship training and operational security." The second medal felt even heavier than the first. This one represented not just her actions on a single day, but months of dedicated work to ensure that other Marines would be better prepared and protected. After the ceremony, as families and friends gathered for the reception, Lieutenant Hayes approached with several members of Alpha Team. They'd all been promoted and reassigned to various units, but they had made sure to be present for this day. "We wanted to give you something," Hayes said, presenting Maria with a framed photograph. It showed the 7 members of Alpha Team at the ambush site, taken during the investigation. Someone had written across the bottom, "To the guardian angel of Alpha Team, thank you for bringing us home. Semper Fi." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes as she looked at the faces of the men she had risked everything to save. "Thank you," she managed to say. "This means more than you know." Sergeant Kim, who had been wounded in the ambush, stepped forward. "We heard about your new assignment, training the next generation of Marine snipers." "That's perfect. You'll make sure they're ready for anything." Maria nodded. "That's the plan. No Marine should ever be caught unprepared if I can help it." As the reception continued, Maria found herself surrounded by fellow Marines eager to hear about her experiences and seek her advice. Young recruits looked at her with admiration, seeing in her a role model who had proven that skill and dedication could overcome prejudice and politics. Captain Walsh joined her as the crowd began to thin. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Surreal," Maria admitted. "A year ago, I thought my career was over. Now I'm being held up as an example for others to follow." "You were always an example," Captain Walsh replied. "The difference is that now people are paying attention. Your story has been circulated throughout the Corps as part of our leadership training. You've become a symbol of what it means to do the right thing, even when it's difficult." Maria looked across the parade ground, where the flag was being lowered in the evening ceremony. "What happened to Colonel Bradley?" "Court-martial next month," Captain Walsh replied grimly. "He's looking at 25 to life in military prison." The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, communications intercepts, testimony from cartel members who were captured. His betrayal went even deeper than we initially thought. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the flag ceremony. "You know," Captain Walsh continued, "there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. Marine Corps headquarters has offered you a position at Quantico, training instructors for the Advanced Sniper program. It would mean a promotion to gunnery sergeant and the chance to influence sniper training across the entire Corps." Maria considered the offer carefully. Quantico was the heart of Marine Corps training, where the best and brightest came to learn and teach. It would be the culmination of everything she had worked for. "It's tempting," she said finally, "but I think I'd like to stay here for a while longer. There's still work to do, and I want to make sure the programs we've started are properly implemented." Captain Walsh smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. This unit needs leaders like you, people who understand that real strength comes from doing what's right, not what's easy." As the sun set over Camp Pendleton, Maria made her way back to her quarters, the weight of her new medals a comfortable reminder of how far she had come. On her desk, next to her father's photograph, sat a stack of training manuals and lesson plans for the next class of sniper candidates. Tomorrow she would begin training a new group of Marines, teaching them not just how to shoot accurately, but how to think tactically and act with integrity under pressure. She would tell them about the importance of preparation, dedication, and the courage to stand up for what's right. And somewhere in those lessons, she would make sure they understood that being underestimated could sometimes be an advantage, that proving people wrong was one of the most satisfying victories of all. Maria Santos had learned that justice might take time, but it was worth waiting for. She had discovered that doing the right thing often came with a price, but that price was always worth paying. Most importantly, she had proven that one person, with skill, courage, and integrity, could make a difference, even when the odds seemed impossible. The sniper who had once been dismissed and sidelined was now one of the most respected Marines on the base, her story serving as an inspiration to others who faced their own battles against prejudice and doubt. As she prepared for sleep that night, Maria looked once more at her father's photograph. "I kept my promise, Dad," she whispered. "I served with honor, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard." Outside her window, the lights of the base twinkled in the darkness, each one representing a Marine who might face their own moment of truth someday. Thanks to Maria's work, they would be better prepared for that moment, better trained, better protected, and better supported by leaders who understood the true meaning of honor and commitment. The echo of that distress call in the mountains had led to more than just a rescue mission. It had exposed corruption, restored justice, and proven that sometimes the most unlikely heroes were the ones who had been waiting in the shadows all along, ready to answer the call when their brothers and sisters needed them most. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had found her place in the Marine Corps at last, not as someone asking for acceptance, but as a leader others looked up to. And that, she knew, was worth all the struggles she had endured to get there. The guardian angel of Alpha Team had become something even more important, a guardian of the values that made the Marine Corps strong. In a world where doing the right thing wasn't always rewarded, she had proven that integrity and courage would eventually triumph. Her story would be told for years to come, inspiring other Marines to stand up for what was right, to never give up on their dreams, and to remember that true strength came not from being the loudest voice in the room, but from being the most reliable one when lives were on the line. The hidden sniper had stepped out of the shadows and into the light where she belonged.